Okay, I've been meaning to do some of these videos from the mainstream media, stuff that came out early on after the Trayvon case was released to the media. And this is CBS News Online that released this clip and back in March 19th. So this is how they were talking about it when it first came out, and this is what you would have seen if you were just coming up on the case. You'd be like, wow. But now we know all this is, bull crap. I mean, watch the pictures, listen to the evidence, pay attention to what they're saying, and I'm going to cut it here and there and talk about it.
College students in Florida held rallies today demanding the arrest of a neighborhood watch captain who shot and killed an unarmed 17-year-old.
So immediately they're pointing out that it's this guy shot and killed an unarmed 17-year-old. So they're biasing the case right away.
The case has brought new attention to a Florida law that allows anyone to defend himself with deadly force.
And the very second thing he says in his sentence, his two sentences, is he wants to talk about Florida's stand your ground law, because this is why the whole case came about. This is the case that they had been looking for. They wanted this case so that they could use it to bring down stand your ground. All the laws that have been being passed concerning guns in the last several months or last couple of years have been all pro-gun. And liberals just hate that because they don't want people to have the right to defend themselves. So what's he talking about? He's talking about, right now, he's talking about gun control.
We asked Mark Strassman to look into it.
Sabrina Fulton has waited nearly a month for what she calls justice, an arrest for the killing of her son.
And there's the picture of I think he's 12 or maybe 13 in this picture. I'm not sure. I have a video where I compare this picture with his 15-year-old picture, and the nose looks a little bit different than you would think it would. It kind of looks like it's been doctored, but that's not what this is about.
Trayvon Martin.
To me, it was no question. There was definitely a murder.
Now, watch her eyes. This is important because in trying to figure out if somebody's telling the truth, one of the things we look at is their eyes. So if their eyes are fluttering or they blink a lot, you count how many times a person blinks in a minute, and that'll tell you how nervous they are. And generally speaking, nervousness means that they're not telling the truth at that moment. That's not always true. I mean, she's on TV. She could be nervous about that. She lost her son. She's nervous about that. When she talks about it, it brings back memories. It's upsetting. So all that you got to take into account when you're trying to determine whether she's being truthful. But if you watch the eyes and you watch the facial expressions, you can pretty much tell that what she's saying is either so upsetting that she can't hold her composure, or that she knows it's not true deep down inside, even if it's on the subconscious level.
To me, it was no question. There was definitely a murder. He was murdered.
Shot in cold blood.
Shot in cold blood.
28-year-old.
You see when she said shot in cold blood, she fluttered her eyes.
Cold blood.
28-year-old George Zimmerman said.
Cold blood.
20 blood.
Shot in cold blood.
Blood.
Shot in cold blood.
28-year-old George Zimmerman says he shot Martin in self-defense February 26th. He remains free.
So they're saying they're letting her speak because they don't want to say it, because in the media they're not allowed to say that this guy was a murderer, but they can bring in a witness and let her give her opinion, no matter how unfounded or how devoid of fact it may be. So what they did was they allow her to come and say her piece, and then they don't allow George's side to be heard. They just tell George's side, and with the least emphasis on the facts that he was defending himself. They don't tell the facts. They don't say, that he had injuries to his face and his head, that he was bleeding, you know, all the stuff that the police report told them. And I can guarantee you when the police talked to them, they explained all this stuff to them. But they don't want this information out. They really would have liked this to just gone to a quick trial and put George away.
Zimmerman, an armed neighborhood watch leader, saw Martin walking inside a gated subdivision near Orlando. He thought the 17-year-old looked suspicious.
Another picture of another picture that has been doctored. This is not what Trayvon looks like. The picture is that particular picture is clearly doctored.
And called police.
He's got his hand in his waistband. Yeah, he's a black male.
And of course, the famous doctoring of the 911 call or the dispatch call.
Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that.
But
so they just put the part where he's talking about him being a black teenager, and then the part about him saying yes, he's following him. So this is the only parts that they want you to hear, which are of course the only parts that make George look bad, even though they're twisted, because we know at the point George gets out of his car, he loses sight of Trayvon. He never regains sight of Trayvon until he turns around to get punched in the nose. And that's a fact. That's one thing we know, that he never does see Trayvon again when he gets out of his car. And if you look at my timeline map video that I have in my collection here, you'll see that Trayvon absolutely lost George and had more than ample time, 4 minutes to get home, and it was a 30-second run. So we know that he either went home and came back, or he hung around and looked for an opportunity to take George out after George got off the phone 2 minutes later.
Zimmerman chased Martin. Neighbors heard a fight and began dialing 911 to report screams and then a gunshot.
So now they're saying George chased Trayvon, but there is no evidence of that, and the media now is making statements based on their opinion. There is no evidence that George ever chased Trayvon. We know that when George got out of his car, he couldn't see Trayvon. We know that he went in the direction Trayvon went, but he never saw him. So he certainly wasn't chasing him. The word chase has a specific meaning, and it's not just, you can't say that by following somebody you're chasing them, even if you're running in the same direction they're running, because the word chase has to do with trying to apprehend or to catch somebody. If you're chasing somebody, you're trying to catch them. If you're just following in the direction they're going, you're not trying to catch them, you're just trying to monitor their movements. And in fact, George has said and has always maintained that it was never his intention to even catch up to Trayvon. He didn't even really want Trayvon to know that he was there. He wanted to be able to see him but not be seen, so that he could tell the police. He's like, I want the cops to call me when they get here so I can tell them, Trayvon, I just went over here. That's what he said. And I don't understand why all these people seem to think that he wanted to kill this kid, and why would he call the cops? There's so many questions, but we know it's absolutely ridiculous to suggest that he was planning on killing him, or at any point decided to kill him because he was black, or because he was a thug, or whatever reason. It's ridiculous. I mean, he got beat up for a minute and took the beating and didn't take out his gun. He could have at any time, but he didn't. So obviously he was hoping somebody would come and stop the fight. Somebody would come and knock Trayvon off of him. You know, one more person, two people against one would have stopped it. Of course, the neighbors didn't want to come out because they didn't know if Trayvon was armed.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your phone number?
Did you recognize the voice on that tape?
That's my baby. That's my son that was yelling.
Now, you see her eyes when she said, they asked. Now, when you listen to the tape, most of the people that are listening to this recording that I'm making here have followed a lot of my videos, so you know George's voice because you've heard it so many times, like I have. We don't have a lot for Trayvon, but I think the majority of us can listen to that yell and say, yes, that sounds like George. It's got that Hispanic tinge to it. You can hear it. So let's just scroll back just a notch here.
Yes. All right, what is your exit on number?
Did you recognize the voice on that tape?
That's my baby. That's my son that was yelling.
When you heard the gunshot, that must have been wrenching.
It left a hole in my heart.
So in that last part there, when he asked about the gunshot, you could see that she really fluttered at that point. And this was definitely a mixture of emotions she was feeling. Her son died at that point. Obviously, she was emotional. So this is just evidence that the fluttering of the eyes is when she's getting emotions. She's getting a lot of things, a lot of stuff is going through her head, and it's emotional, very emotional.
An explosion came in my heart when I heard the gunshot.
Zimmerman had a permit to carry a concealed weapon.
Again, here's George. Doesn't look anything like the George that we see on, now that we know what he looks like. You could look at that picture and see the George that we see today, and you wouldn't even be able to know who it was. They don't even look alike.
A 9mm handgun. Trayvon Martin was unarmed.
And here's another picture. Doesn't look anything like the Trayvon that beat the hell out of George. I mean, if it was that big thick neck guy against this little kid, yeah, absolutely. George would have just slammed that kid around. He would have just picked him up and bounced him around. A big old thick guy like that against this little tiny 12-year-old, of course. But we're not talking about that, are we? We're talking about a 17-year-old, a 6'3" 17-year-old, 168 pounds, against a guy that was out of shape.
He carried a cell phone, a can of iced tea, and a bag of candy he had just bought at a 7-Eleven. 2 weeks ago, we asked Sanford Police Chief Bill Lee why Zimmerman was not in jail.
So they always point out what he was carrying as if that matters. It really escapes them that using the sidewalk as a platform to bash somebody's head is indeed a deadly weapon. If Trayvon would have lived through this thing, if the police would have got there 2 minutes earlier or a minute earlier, then we know that Trayvon would be in jail right now. Trayvon would be facing trial right now. George would be sitting at home. Right? Anybody disagree with that? Trayvon was the one that was beating the hell out of George. If the cops would have came and found Trayvon on top of George, and all the evidence that we know, Trayvon with no damage to his face or body or head, and George all busted up, what do you think that would have happened? The cops would have taken Trayvon away in handcuffs, and George would have walked home free. There would have been no issue at all. So it's all about timing.
Mr. Zimmerman felt that he, in self-defense, needed to fire his weapon.
A 2000.
See, so that is the problem that these people have. CBS hates this, that people in general can use their gun or any other weapon, because this is not a gun law. This is actually a self-defense law, which says you can use your spatula, you can use your electric carving knife to defend your life. You can use anything that you can get your hands on and kill somebody if necessary. Baseball bat, whatever you can find. But they just want to focus on the guns. And they really, really, really hate the idea that you, as an individual, can defend yourself. You have to wait. You have to call the cops. Now, the cops are allowed to do it. If the cops feel threatened, or they feel that you're being threatened, they can pull out their gun and blow somebody's head off, and that's okay. And the truth is, the statistics show that police are more likely to shoot somebody unjustly than an individual. So people say, oh, well, the police are trained. They're made, they know when to shoot and when not. No, they don't. They're no different than anybody else. The training doesn't change anything. They're put in a lot more situations that are dangerous. So, and they want to go home. So, believe me when I tell you, don't put a police in danger because they will blow your brains out. It happens all the time. I mean, right over here in Florida, we've had 2 or 3 just in the last month or so where the cops just shoot somebody because they're driving in that direction at the cop. The cop feels threatened and boom. And that's the end of that guy. Or even girl.
2005 Florida law, known as Stand Your Ground, allows deadly force when someone feels reasonably threatened.
That's the key. Reasonably threatened. Anybody, the way that we find out if something's reasonable is we say, you take reasonable people and you say, put yourself in that position and say, what would you do? If you were laying on your back with your head on the concrete and a guy is pounding your head on the concrete, what is your reaction? What do you do? Now, you've yelled for a minute. You're screaming and yelling. Nobody's coming. One guy sees you. He says he's calling 911. Well, we know how long 911 takes. The typical response time is 5 minutes. George didn't want him to call 911. The police were already on their way, and he knew that. The problem was he going to survive the time between that time when he's calling John for help and when the police get there? There's no way for him to know. You know, the next blow could knock him out. Once he's out, the gun is available to Trayvon. So George doesn't have to wait. In fact, he waited way longer than the average guy would. If you sit down with 10 guys and say, what would you do in this situation? Honest people, 8 out of the 10 would say, I would have shot him when he busted my nose and knocked me to the ground and got on me. Once I felt like I had no way out, I would just shoot him immediately. I wouldn't wait around. I wouldn't have given him the opportunity to bang my head 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever times. I wouldn't give him that opportunity. Let's continue.
But Sabrina Fulton says the real issue here is race.
If he had pulled the trigger and he was a African American male and he shot a Caucasian man, a white man, yes, he would be in jail.
So, of course, now it has to be a racial issue. So they brought up guns, but obviously the media is more concerned with the guns to start with because they really want to knock down all these gun laws. But more than that, now they're gonna talk about race, and they waited till towards the end of the clip. But this is it. This is the race card, and you know, as we know, it's already been knocked down. But they're gonna let her spread this vial.
Martin's family wants the FBI to take over this as a civil rights case.
Of course they want the FBI to take over because the FBI is biased. You know, the DA's office and the police department had already followed through on this case properly. And the reason the state took over, the reason the governor decided to appoint a special prosecutor was because of the claims of racism and the claims that there was a civil rights issue that needed to be looked at. So now that we know that that's not true, the state and the prosecutor should be handing the case back down to the DA's office. Now that we know the DA did everything right and the police department did everything right, the police department should reinstate the police chief that they moved out just because of the race baiters, and the case should be returned to the DA, and the DA should at that point decide whether they're going to file charges or not. The charges against George should be dropped. All of his money should be returned, every penny. And if for some reason the bondsman says, no, I put the money out, I'm not going to give it back, then the state should return it. The state took it away. The judge took it away from him wrongfully. This whole case was wrongful. There was the normal balance of power had been absurd. They took away George's rights. He was falling under the law as it was written, and then the state comes in, and even the president steps in and says that these laws need to be looked at, talking about stand your ground, as if George did something wrong. We know George did nothing wrong. He did everything right. Stand your ground was perfectly set up just for this reason, and now they know, if you read today's paper, that there are going to be no laws changed. They're not going to change any laws about guns. Even with this newest shooting, no way. People know you guys can do this all you want. You can make it. You can point at every single situation. You can even create situations. We don't care. It's not going to change our attitude. The more you do it, the more likely we're going to think we need more guns, because we know that all those people in that theater had guns. At least they would have had a fighting chance. Those 12 people were shot. If they would have had a gun, this guy probably would be dead, and we could have taken off his mask and found out who he really was.
Local prosecutors are reviewing, and Zimmerman has given no interviews except to Sanford police.
What interviews did you think he was going to give? I mean, he did everything that the police asked. He's only talking to the police because they're the ones that matter. So maybe if he would have come to CBS and bent down on one knee and kissed the ring and said, "Oh, please, bless me," maybe then they wouldn't have tortured him and destroyed his reputation and killed him. He's never ever going to be allowed to walk on the street safe ever again. And this is their fault. This is definitely a lawsuit. These people, whoever wrote this stuff, not only is this a civil suit, this is a criminal suit. They have incited violence against an individual, which is absolutely illegal.
Mark Strassman, CBS News, Miami.
So I just wanted to play that guy's name because you got to give him all credit for the fair use. I just think it's ridiculous that all these people, CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, etc., even Fox in the beginning, gave George no credit. And what's going on right now in this newest shooting reminds me of exactly the same thing. I mean, they've got this guy, he's all obviously drugged up. He can't even speak for himself. It would be impossible to speak when you're drugged as much as he was. And then to assume that he's guilty. And, you know, I walk around and talk to people every day, and the majority of people that I talk to say, "Oh yeah, he's guilty. He's guilty. Maybe there was some other people involved, but this guy's obviously guilty." And I'm like, well, what makes you think that? Well, because they found him in the car with the guns. You know, that's what you would expect if they had drugged somebody and tried to make it look like he did something, wouldn't you? Anyway, good talking to you guys.